Hey guys, welcome back to the Hot Mess Medium Show. I am really excited to talk about this. It feels important. It feels really good. I feel like I've been recently inspired. There has been a spark to talk about this. Even though, funny enough, this is the question that I get asked the most. And if you are also a psychic medium or if you're kind of in the similar line of work as I'm in, maybe you have also been asked this question. If you are not, you've probably wondered this question. So I'm here to not only answer this for you, but to also just share my own personal experience with it all. It's going to be different for everyone, of course. Um, and all I can do is share from my perspective, my experience, the things that I've learned, and all of that jazz. So basically, the question that I get asked literally all the time is if I can turn it off, it being my abilities, right? Like, and I feel like I've been asked this question so many times in different ways. Sometimes people say, do you just like see dead people everywhere? Or like, do you feel anyone around me? Um, are you just like always getting information? It's basically all kind of the same question. So my answer is like, yes, I can turn it off now. Now I can. I definitely struggled with that in the past. And this is why I'm so grateful for mentorship and why I feel mentorship is so important. Um, for me, anyways, I know that there are a lot of mediums and intuitives out there who don't get mentorship, and that's totally fine. But I truly feel like there's always room for growth, and I'm someone who's really passionate about learning and growing and evolving. And so mentorship was a very, very impactful thing for me personally. And I feel like that's honestly what helped me get to where I am now. That, and of course, just me being open to building my relationship with spirit, because I think that's really important too, right? Same as with my personal relationship with the creator, with God. I think that's really important versus being told how it should look like or what it should feel like, what it should be like, how it's supposed to be. um, I feel like it's important to come to a place of balance, but what usually happens before we come to a place of balance, we go to a few different extremes, right? We kind of teeter on, one end of the spectrum to the other. And so I, am no, how do you say that? I am no exception. I've definitely teetered on both ends of the spectrum. Many times I've, gone from one extreme to the other, but then I kind of always found my way back to um, balance or like the middle, right? And I feel like that's just part of how I learn and grow and evolve the best is through trial and error and figuring it out. And yeah, so anyways, let's get back to what I originally wanted to, you know, answer for you guys today. So I do have notes, which never ever happens on this podcast. That is a very rare thing for me to do, but I was thinking to myself earlier tonight because it's like 10:30 right now and I'm sitting in my bedroom recording this because I really wanted to make sure that I had a new podcast episode out. I did not want to break my commitment after 1 week of saying that there would be new episodes every Tuesday. So here we are. Anyways, I was helping my son with his essay that he had also waited to the last minute to finish. And so, yeah, anyways, while I was helping him and he was like typing out what he needed to do, I took out my notes app and started typing out what was coming through to share in this episode. So, yeah, I will be kind of following those notes so that I don't forget anything. But, as per usual, I am open to whatever else decides to float through my channel, that'll be supportive for this episode, and what I'm meant to cover. So, as I mentioned, I now can kind of turn off my abilities. Um, Something I cannot turn off, though, which this came up during my most recent reading that I did for a group of 4. Absolutely incredible, absolutely mind blowing. Like, holy crap. I don't even, there are no words. It was amazing. It was spot on. Spirit was just the most excellent communicators. Sorry, the loved ones in spirit who came through were all excellent communicators. And yeah, it was just amazing. So before we got into the mediumship, we were having a discussion about intuition, and this question had come up about, can you turn it off? And so I mentioned that, now I can, but something I can't turn off is just like my natural intuition, because that's just part of being a human. And what I mean by that is like my ability to walk into a room and feel if it's heavy or light, right? I could feel if there's tension between two people. I can feel um, how someone is feeling without them even showing it on their faces. And that's not me tuning into someone without their consent, because that is extremely important. We are going to be talking about that, absolutely. Um, that is just me being a human who happens to have a lot of empathy and a strong intuition. But you don't need to be a psychic medium in order to be able to do that. And, I'm sure you can relate to that, even if you don't consider yourself, super intuitive or whatever. You have had instances where your intuition was kicking in, right? You just knew something about a person. You, like, someone popped into your mind and you just had a gut feeling like you needed to call them, and it turned out that they're going through something. Maybe there's been times in your life where you just had this weird nudge to go in a different direction, and it turned out that if you had gone the other direction that you'd normally go in, there would have been danger, something bad would have happened or whatever. That's just like normal. That's like human. We were born with that. Okay. So, yeah, that's like the conversation that we had. So, when I'm working with clients, um, as an esthetician, right, I'm touching them because it's aesthetics. That's like part of the job, right? I'm holding their hand while doing their manicure. I'm holding their feet while doing their pedicure. Our auras are literally touching, right? Um, we are in very close proximity at that point, and I am extremely, highly sensitive. So there might be times where I feel things that aren't mine, and that's just like, oh, that just happens. Like, I can't exactly help that, but that doesn't mean I am purposely tuning into the person. I'm not crossing boundaries in that way. What would be crossing boundaries is if I were literally intending to tune in to what was going on with the person, um, which loved ones were around them, and what it was that wanted to come through for them. Like that's like a totally different thing. You see what I mean? Um, anyways, so when I was a newbie, I didn't have an understanding of boundaries in general. So I didn't know anything about energetic boundaries. I didn't know anything about having boundaries with spirit. And I didn't even have an understanding, not even like a basic understanding of boundaries in any relationship, like not even for myself. Um, because I was such a people pleaser. I also had come from a lot of, trauma. I experienced a lot of trauma growing up, and I am someone who wasn't born and raised into a family where there were healthy boundaries, or where boundaries were being modeled. Um, so that just wasn't something that I was personally familiar with, and I believe that, just in my experience and what I've learned and all of that, that the relationship you have with yourself and with others is going to mirror your relationship with spirit and the spirit world. So, yeah, not having any boundaries in my real regular life, and one second. Anyways, my throat got just so dry all of a sudden. Um, not having boundaries in my life at all, um, meant I also didn't have any sort of boundaries at all with the spirit world. And my aura was extremely spongy, as in, I was very open and susceptible to absorbing so much from other people, because I didn't know that there was another way. I didn't know how to prevent that. I didn't know how to deal with that. And I also didn't know, um, sorry, not that I didn't know, I didn't have personal power. And personal power, like rebuilding personal power, taking your power back in all these different areas of your life, it actually creates energetic boundaries. So, boundaries in your aura. It makes your aura stronger. It makes it less spongy. It makes you less susceptible to absorbing shitty garbage energy from outside sources, in a nutshell. So, yeah, that was like a big thing for me. Just not having the knowledge, the experience, the resources, um, any of that, when it came to boundaries. So that was like a really big game changer for me. Um, the other thing was that I didn't know anything about, grounding. Like, I didn't know the difference between being ungrounded and being grounded, because I had only ever been ungrounded. What a flippin' difference when I finally learned the difference, first of all, and I started actively, practicing grounding, which for me, grounding looks like a lot of different things. And, I'm kind of going to be also talking about the nervous system at the same time, because Grounding is obviously super supportive for the nervous system. My nervous system was way out of whack. It was very dysregulated. Um, I was used to being disassociated. I was used to, um, not being super connected to my body. So much of my energy was trapped up in my head, versus the lower half of my body. And so that means that I did so much overthinking, worrying, I had so much anxiety. I was constantly, constantly in my head versus, when you are grounded, you are in your body, you feel more solid, stable, you know, calm. You're not so much in your head. You're able to feel what you are feeling, emotionally and physically. It's so weird how, as I'm talking, and maybe you can hear me struggling right now. My throat is getting so fucking dry as I'm talking, and I don't know why. I feel like I'm about to choke, like as I'm talking. Anyway, so I was struggling, but I'm okay now. So, grounding. Very important, very supportive, lovely thing to do. I was, not grounded at all before. So, different ways that I ground. The obvious ones, literally planting your feet on the ground, specifically outside, barefoot. But that's not always an option. Tonight, for example, we are actually experiencing our first snowstorm of the season, yeah, it's crazy. So I don't think I will be placing my bare feet on the ground anytime soon. But there are other ways, thankfully. It just requires like using all of your senses, smelling something earthy. You can use aromatherapy. You could smell herbs and spices and things like that. That's very grounding. You can eat very grounding foods, root vegetables. Meat is also very grounding. Feeling how your body is supported by whatever you're sitting on or whatever you are standing on, really like weighing into that. Having a bath, having a shower, that can also be very grounding. Even though it's water, it's still very grounding. It's very supportive, you know. Yeah, I think I've listed off like the main things that I do personally. Um, Anyways, those are all things that were very supportive for me. I feel like I'm getting off topic again, but let's see what else there is. Yeah, so, the other thing. I mentioned this like a little bit, but I, can now turn it off because I'm not walking around with the intention of being wide open. I'm not walking around looking for spirit. I'm not looking for someone to read. I'm not hoping a message will spontaneously flow through me. Whereas when I was starting out, I idolized like Teresa Caputo, Long Island Medium, because I was like, oh my God, how incredible. She's walking into the grocery store and look at the beautiful message that she delivered to that perfect stranger who's doing her groceries and, needed to hear from her husband. Look at the healing that just took place. That's amazing. That sort of thing, right? That was before I even knew that, first of all, that's not even the way that it works. That they approach the people before she even reads them to make sure they consent and all that stuff. But either way, I have learned that is extremely unethical, and it's just not the right way to go about things. It just isn't, not for anyone. It's it just isn't. Yeah, so like, before I knew all of that, I was so excited once I discovered that I had these abilities and that I could do this work. And I was constantly looking for opportunities to explore it, to stretch it, to discover more about it, right? And so I was really open. I was like hoping someone would come through for someone. And there were many times in the beginning where I did, you know, this is so embarrassing, but I did relay messages without first asking permission, um, because I did have spirit come through wanting me to be a messenger. And, looking back now, as much as I'm like, I have the ick a little bit, from past me, um, which I mean, are you even growing if you don't have the ick from past you? I don't know. But anyways, when I look back, I'm like, oh gosh, like really? But at that time, I feel like there was a purpose for that. And I know in my heart that the people who did receive those messages, they did need those messages. They really did. Um, and I'd like to think it was a beautiful thing, and I'm really grateful for that. But at the same time, like when you know better, you do better, right? And now I know better, and so I'm gonna do better. And um, I always ask permission before sharing information. Um, just an example, this was years ago. I can't remember when it actually was, but I had done many readings. I had taken a mentorship. I was no longer like a baby medium, right? And there was a time where a loved one did come through spontaneously while eating at Montana's, the restaurant, with a friend. And I have shared this story many times, in many different ways. But basically, you know, the spirit would not leave. He was very, very adamant that I share this message. And I kind of like, not bargained with the spirit, but I was like, okay, because I knew who it was for. Like, spirit showed me who it was for. And I was like, okay, if they leave at the same time as me, like, I'll deliver the message. And they did. They left at the same time as me. We walked into the parking lot. Turns out we parked right beside each other. Like, you can't even make this shit up. Um, I did approach her, but I was honest and upfront with about like what it is I do. And I said, if you are not interested at all, I would completely understand. Like, I didn't start just dropping a bunch of information on her, that was coming through. I was totally prepared for her to like tell me that I was crazy and to leave her alone. Like, I was like prepared for it. But no, she was open, and I'm so grateful for that. And looking back now, I'm kind of like, I feel like spirit knew that she would be open, right? Like, I feel like spirit knew that. And I'm so grateful that I was able to connect with her and to, connect her to her brother, because that's who it was. It was her brother, and it turned out to be almost exactly 1 year since his passing. Or I can't remember if it was like 1 year since his passing, or just like it was almost exactly like, the anniversary of his passing, something like that. But anyways, yeah. Where am I going with that? Yeah, just basically that I ask permission before doing it, but yeah, I don't like that just doesn't happen. But honestly, I kind of trust that if that were to happen again, it's like, okay, if spirit's going to go out of their way to like make sure I deliver a message, it's probably for a good reason, and the person is more than likely super open to it. Um, because I have those boundaries in place. Like, it's so rare that it happens now, I swear. Um, anyways, so where am I going from here? Where am I going? um, yeah, okay. So the other thing I wanted to share was that, now I am working with people in a different way, right? I'm doing aesthetics now, and I'm also a psychic medium. So I'm like really in close proximity to people in a whole new way because before I worked from home. I did readings like online mostly. It was very rare that I did in person readings. And yeah, now things are obviously different. I'm like super involved in my community and like I'm getting to know new people all the time because of where I work, like at a spa. And like I said, I'm like touching people now, right? I'm doing their nails, I'm massaging, I'm doing pedicures, things like that. So I'm like, our auras are connecting, right? Because we all have an aura, which is an extension of your spirit, an extension of your energy. And when you are literally physically close to someone, your auras are like interconnected. They are connecting. That's why you can feel from people when you are so close to them. That is also why people who are really close can often have like telepathic conversations. Like you can, they'll think of something and it'll pop into your head, and you say it out loud, and they're like, "What the heck? I was just thinking that," and vice versa. Um, that is a normal thing. That is just like part of being human. So, if things kind of pop up like that when I am working in my aesthetics biz, it's not because I'm like purposely trying to tune into someone. I am just a very highly sensitive person. I am empathic and I am intuitive. And like, there's just times where things just pop in my brain and then I say it out loud, but I'm not doing it on purpose. I'm just existing, honestly. And I know that this happens to everyone all the time, every day, and they're not doing it on purpose. It's just part of us being humans who are very connected. We are so connected to each other, and we don't even realize it. Um, there have been a few times, though, where I've gotten surprises where, okay, for example, I was doing a manicure on a client, and in my mind, I saw this German Shepherd dog, and I knew it was a male. And so, being oblivious to the fact that I'm a psychic medium, um, because I was just in a very like grounded space, right? Oh my God. Nothing is more grounding than doing aesthetics because you're just so in the zone. You're just so focused on what you're doing in the moment and who you're with. And seriously, it's been so good for my mental health. It's been so good for like practicing being more present and just like in the moment. So, anyways, so I'm doing her nails and I see this German Shepherd dog in my brain. And I'm like, did you have, or like, was it you? It's like I was talking about it as if we had had a conversation about it before. Like, it was just this weird inner knowing, like, oh, she has or had this German Shepherd dog. And it's like I thought I was thinking of a memory of us having a conversation about the dog. I was wrong. You see, animals in spirit don't have very good boundaries. They don't really understand boundaries because they're animals. Um, and so I brought up this, male German Shepherd, and she's like, I don't have one. No, she's like, but I did. I was like, oh, like he's passed, and she's like, yeah. And so we just start talking about her, her German Shepherd, who was a really good boy and who was a huge part of her life. And funny enough, she had been thinking of him recently, and I think she just really needed to talk about him and to have that space held for her to reminisce and to, think of the love, the bond that they shared, and how big of an impact he was in her life. And I was like, wow, I love that. I love that this just happened. It was such a great conversation. And, again, it wasn't me trying to tune in on purpose to make conversation. It was like literally it just popped in. And so I went with it. And that was really beautiful. Um, there was another time, this was kind of weird though. So when I'm like, if it's like the day before I'm about to do a group event, like a big in person group event, spirit will work on my energy. It's like my energy is being prepared and I do become more open. And it's not on purpose, it's just that's the way it is. My energy is being prepared and I do become more open before an event. And so I'm doing a pedicure for someone, and it's literally the day before a giant group event. And I'm aware I'm more sensitive right now. My energy is being prepared. And, you know, me and this woman, I've never met her before. It's the very first time meeting her. She starts talking about her family cabin and how she's there with, her siblings, and, you know, she's talking about like some memories and things like that. And all of a sudden, half of sorry, this sounds crazy. I'm judging myself right now. All of a sudden, half of my face goes numb. But not just numb, it physically droops. Half of my face physically droops. And she's looking at me and she's like wondering if I'm okay. And I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah, I'm fine. And I'm like thinking, and I'm like, okay, is this mine? Do I need an ambulance? Am I okay? By the way, my face has drooped before spontaneously. Not spontaneously, but like while connecting with spirit, which is obviously my sign for stroke. Not a personal stroke, but the loved one in spirit showing me that they suffered from a stroke. And so um, I become aware that, okay, this isn't mine. Clearly, with her, she's talking about family. She's talking about um, the memories attached to this cabin, and it's literally pulling in the energy of whoever's connected to that place. And I had this knowing that it was a male who she'd be super close with who was trying to come through. Now, I did not, I think it's important to use discernment in life in general, but especially with this type of work. And in that moment, it did not feel right to be like, oh, by the way, I'm a medium and like, here's what's happening, right? As I mentioned, I would have asked for permission anyways if I did feel called to share it with her, but instead, I was like, I just explained, when she was asking me if I was okay, I explained, like, oh, I'm just really intuitive and sometimes I feel things. And I think I just asked her, like, does that ever happen to you? Um, and funny enough, that was like the segue into her talking about her brother. Sorry, I don't know why I said funny enough. There's obviously nothing funny about it. I don't know why I said that, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like, it was the segue into her talking about her brother who had passed on from a stroke. So, like, obviously, um, he was the one who I was connecting to, but I just allowed her to talk about him. Um, because, like, it's just how the conversation kind of organically evolved. Um, but there was no, like, forcing or anything like that, and I didn't catch her off guard by, like, sharing very personal information, while she's trapped because I'm giving her a pedicure. Like, obviously I wouldn't do that. So anyways, um yeah, that was like another situation, I guess you could say, where spirit kind of came through, but I just sort of, like I said, used my discernment and um, allowed the conversation to go where it needed to go. Anyways, so my point is, very rarely has spirit come in spontaneously, um, because of the boundaries that I now have in place, and because of the empowered relationship I have with spirit, right? It's so important when you're doing this work to have an empowered relationship with spirit, and to know that you are not a victim of your gift or abilities. I know there's a lot of misconceptions out there. There's a lot, like, so many. Like, it gives me a headache. There's so many things that people believe when it comes to this work, like that you have to do this, or you have to do that, or this is the only way, or I don't know. There's just so many, like, superstitions, and there's a lot of, like, icky, unethical things. There's a lot of stereotypes. This is why having these conversations is important, Like, for the longest time, I had people honestly, truly believe that I could just, like, read their minds, and that I would just, if I was near them, I was reading their mind. I was going to learn all of their deep dark secrets. But, like, if only people knew how busy my brain is. Um like, I have ADHD. My mind is constantly going, and I could not imagine the effort or energy it would take to be constantly on, be constantly tuning in, be like, not only that, it feels so wrong on every level. The idea of, like, snooping in people's business. Um, yeah, not for me. Something I live by is to, you know, treat people how you want to be treated. Now, would I want people doing that to me? Absolutely freaking not. So yeah, obviously I'm not going to do that to other people. I've also had people think that that the spirits are with me, that I just have, like, a posse of loved ones who hang around me, that the only way to get to their loved ones is through me. None of those things are true at all. Like, your loved ones are bonded to you through your bond of love. Like, you guys are bonded. Um, so yeah, no, it's not like you don't need me in order to get to them, and they're not just, like, following me. That's not the way it works at all. Oh my god, I'm sorry, I keep burping. Hopefully you can't hear that. Um I move a lot of energy when I'm doing these episodes, and I can't help it. It's just, yeah, part of it. Okay. What else was I going to say? I think the other thing that I wanted to mention is just how much healthier it feels in my mind, body, and soul to not be turned on all the time. Because when you are turned on all that sounds, I just realized how that sounds to be turned on all the time. You know what I'm trying to say though. I am talking about like to have all of my abilities being turned on and like ready to receive information at any given moment, looking for a spirit, looking for someone to read. Like that is so draining. That is so exhausting. That is not healthy at all. It's not supportive. Yeah, it just isn't. And so what would I say? Yeah, that's the question coming to mind. What would I say to someone who's like, how do I turn this off? Like, where do I even start? Um, because, maybe you're someone you no longer want to see yourself as a victim when it comes to your abilities, or like, maybe you are getting bombarded by spirit in the night, or um you feel so much around other people and it's really overwhelming, like, how do I turn it off? Where do I begin? Okay. That's a really good question. Okay, it's also a really loaded question, so just bear with me here. Honestly, okay, the first thing coming through is the grounding piece, what I was talking about in the beginning. Practicing more grounding. Get more connected to your body. Because what happens when you start getting more connected to your body, you start reclaiming ownership of your body, which then leads to you reclaiming more personal power, which then leads to, were you listening in the beginning? Do you know what I'm going to say? When you start reclaiming more personal power, that creates more boundaries in your energy, and then you are not open and susceptible constantly to like all the energy around you, right? So it's like all this, like, what's the word, like ripple effect? It's a ripple effect. Um, it's all connected. So like start with practicing grounding, finding more ways to ground and to pause and to be present and to like be in your body. Like something I love doing is shaking, like, and jumping up and down, to like shake the energy, to move the energy. That's really good. Um, to like literally lay down with a hand on my stomach, the other hand on my chest, and to just feel not only the sensation of my hands on my body and that warmth from my hands, the just like the touch from my hands on my body, but to also be mindfully feeling how my hands are going up and down as I'm breathing, right? You're tuning into your breath. And then I'm also feeling how my body is being held and supported by the bed that I'm laying on. It's all just this like delicious, supportive, grounding slash like nervous system settling exercise. You know, it's all about these like small practices. It's like a small act of love to yourself and your body. You're just giving yourself that gift of being present and connecting. And that in itself is a huge thing. That right there is like you reclaiming part of personal power, because you are saying yes to you. You are giving yourself permission to make space for you. You are reclaiming that connection and relationship to your body. You see how it's just all so connected, right? Like there's so much good stuff there, and it's so simple. Um, it's like you're meeting yourself where you're at versus denying yourself constantly, because that's part of the problem is we often deny ourselves the like most basic things. um and it's actually like it's a problem, and it's really sad, and I was there. I used to do that all the time. you know we make excuses that, well, I'm a mom and I work and I'm busy and I have to do this and I have to do that. But like, who is that serving? Honestly, who is that serving? No one, like literally no one. And yeah, we just got to stop constantly denying ourselves, the gift of hitting the pause button once in a while. It's so important. And again, it's like it's actually so simple, and the ripple effect it's going to have is like freaking huge. Work on rebuilding that relationship with yourself, and it's crazy how that will have um, such a beautiful effect on all of your relationships, right? In the beginning, I talked about how your relationship with yourself and your relationship with others will actually mirror your relationship with the spirit world. Well, same thing with, your relationship with yourself will mirror the relationships in your life in general. Um, it's wild. That was like a really significant part of my development journey. It's it's crazy to think back, honestly, where I was then versus where I am now. And it's through relationships that we actually learn so much about ourselves. We heal so much, because we're, if you think of it, when you're in a relationship or, whatever, you have many relationships. I'm not just talking about like romantic, but like friendships and, family and stuff like that, or even, yeah, whatever. You're constantly being presented with opportunities to heal, to grow, to reflect, um, to say no, to say yes, to, not people please, or to continue a cycle. You're constantly being given the option to choose whether you're aware of it or not. And I mean, I guess awareness is a huge piece there, developing that over time. Um, but it's going to happen, it's going to come, especially after listening to this. And I really hope that after listening to this, like obviously you're not going to like remember everything that you just heard, but there's seeds being planted, right? There's things that you're going to be able to take away from this, and it's going to kind of um, just support you however you're meant to be supported at this time. Like you're going to take away the specific nuggets of information that you really needed. And maybe, there's an invitation for you to come back to it, because like when you feel called, of course, because maybe there are um, things that when you listen back to this, you're gonna take away different things, right? Anyways, so I I feel like this is kind of, yeah, this is complete, this is good. But if you have more questions about this topic, please, like, I think you can I think you can leave questions in a comment box under the episode in Spotify. I can't remember. If not, send them to me on my website, which is mediumnatashiamac.com. There's like a contact area where you can drop things in for the podcast. You can, of course, also find me at Medium Natasha Mac on Instagram, um, or on Facebook. So just, yeah, if you have a question, I would love to be invited to answer your question. Um, because I feel like the last part of this with the big question of like, okay, how do I start turning it off type of thing. I feel like that's a whole other episode, but I would love if you had more like a specific question about this that I can go deeper into. So that's my invitation for you. I'm sending you so much love. I really hope that you found this episode helpful, and I will see you guys next week.